This is ODAT Chat, your instant connection to recovery and community, one day at a time. This podcast may contain strong language, sexual content, and spiritual truth. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey friend, welcome to another episode of the ODAT Chat podcast. In case you're new here, my name is Arlena and I'll be your host. This is a podcast where my guests share their stories of alcoholism and addiction and their journey to recovery. For information on today's episode and past episodes, visit the website at odatchat.com. I'm happy to introduce to you my new friends, Jason and Charlie from the Way Out podcast. First, I'll be speaking with Jason, who not only shares his story of recovery, but after we recorded the interview, he sent me a short documentary on his life, which you can find in the show notes at odatchat.com. But before we jump into the episode, I would like to introduce you to our new show sponsor, Cold Fire Coffee. So Bobby and I have been drinking the medium roast called Styx River Coffee for months and months now, and I finally thought I got to share this with my ODAT crew. So here's my recommendation. If you love a flavor that's kind of higher on the caffeine and but you hate the bitter aftertaste that's so common with a lot of those lighter roasts, then you have to try this roast. It's rich, smooth, and it won't disappoint. And just for being an awesome listener, you get 30% off. Just visit coldfirefunnel.com/ODAT. So the last resource I'll share with you is soberlifeschool.com. This is an online school with short courses on recovery-related issues. So for instance, how to deal with relationships. There is relationship rescue. This is a process for people in a relationship who are struggling to reconnect, who have lots of resentment, and who desperately want to get back to the place of love and connection with their partner. So the course is where we use the steps to focus on healing in relationships. So it's done in 4 phases. So there's the introduction call where we kind of review the issue. There's the permission to vent call where we identify the specific causes of the resentments. And then there is the relationship inventory. And this is like where we really get into it like a 4-step and kind of get to that place where we can focus in on what your part is. And then the last call is the plan. We'll discuss your progress and review your plan moving forward. So for more information, visit soberlifeschool.com and look for Relationship Rescue. So as I mentioned, I'm talking with Jason from the Way Out podcast. If you've been listening for any length of time, you know that I have a special place in my heart for people who do a lot of service work, and Jason is no exception. So he was so transparent and open about some extremely painful experiences that it really touched my heart. He is such a sweetheart. I just loved his message of hope and all that he's doing to really help himself and help others. He is such an amazing example of transformation that comes from doing the steps. So without further delay, please enjoy this episode with Jason. So Jason, thank you so much for joining me on the ODAT Chat podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And I connected with you guys through social media somehow and saw that you guys have a podcast, you and Charlie.
Yeah, the Way Out podcast. And it's fun. It's a really big blessing to me. It's been a big part of my recovery.
You guys have 136 episodes published on iTunes. Is that right?
Yeah, I started. Yeah, right. He actually was the first podcast I ever appeared on. And that was, I think, episode 31 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Is me telling my story at 5.5 months sober. And it's like 90% war stories and every bad thing that ever happened to me. And then like 5 to 10 minutes of like the solution, like how things have been getting better. But it was just the beginning of my recovery. And
yeah.
So it's kind of weird how, as time went on, I was on it a couple more times. for some panel for a while. He was doing these like panel episodes where we'd have like 4 people talking about a topic for like 25 minutes. And then now, you know, a while back he was wanting to change the format of his show, and he posted something on Sober and Serious, and it was like, we have 22,000 members on that site.
22,000?
Right? And nobody expressed interest. All I did was basically like, I would like was encouraging him in my comment, and then he had private messaged me and asked me like if I wanted to help him take this thing to the next level, and I was like, hell yeah. And then Alex, the other kid, he used to be a sponsee of mine, and he's the only other person out of 22,000 people that expressed any interest. And it was the weirdest thing. I mean, to me, that's like God's handiwork all over that. You know, nothing happens in this world an accident. I think it was meant to be what it is. You know what I mean? So it's been awesome. It's been really awesome. Like, it's 40 episodes since I started already. It's like like I think it was September or August last year when I started doing the show.
You know, and that's really brave too, because there's a lot of people who are not anonymous, who are not out. They sort of go with the whole anonymity thing. And it's a personal decision, right? It takes some time to sort of decide whether you're going to go public or not. How did you decide to go public with it?
Honestly, I guess I don't really know how to answer that one. It was just one of them things. In the beginning, I didn't talk, and I'd show up late and I'd leave early, so nobody ever had a chance to get to know me. And I probably wasn't 100% present when I was in the meetings, but I kept going to them because I didn't know what to do. And it was seeing this stuff work in other people that gave me hope, which then gave me the willingness to ask for help. And I just basically verbal diarrheaed in a meeting one day about all this stuff that I was going through, and like pleaded with them that I needed their help, you know. And from that moment, I started to engage in conversations with people and really listen to what they were telling me, and being honest about what I was feeling and what I was experiencing. And I started to feel them benefits of vulnerability, which I had never even occurred to me that could give me any relief before, honestly. I think I was so trapped in, nobody could ever understand that terminal unique feeling of, you know, like, my situation is so bad that like these people are going to judge me, or you know. And it's so wrong, dude. It's like you're not that unique, you know what I mean? And you learn that, and when you feel that relief, it's such a load off. So I think once I felt the benefits of that vulnerability, I couldn't help but dive into doing that kind of stuff. You know, it took a while. I had to work hard on myself before I was in a place where I could tell my story without losing my shit, you know.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really difficult to do, I think. You know, I think it's important to do the work first before you start sharing, definitely. But let's backtrack just a little bit. I'm so curious about people's family of origin, because I feel like, you know, it's like the childhood trauma or things that happen in our childhood that sort of set the stage for, you know, the setup for addiction and things like that. So maybe you could just briefly tell me, you know, like where did you grow up and what were you like as a little kid?
Okay. Well, I think I was born in Robbinsdale, Minnesota at North Memorial Hospital in 1980, July 23rd, 1980. And my mom and my dad split up when I was about, I don't even think I was 2 years old.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, single mother with, she was a partier. I don't remember a lot from those really, really young years, but I know when I was 5, my mom got in a motorcycle accident, and she had what was at the time the worst recorded head injury in the history of the state of Minnesota.
Oh my God.
So she flew like She flew like 150 feet, landed on her chin. She was riding on the back of some guy's motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
I think they got rear-ended, and she went flying, landed on her chin, dislocated her jaw on both sides.
Oh my
She was
God.
in a coma for 3 months, hospitalized for an additional 3 months on top of that. I don't remember seeing her in the hospital, but I guess her head was like the size of a watermelon.
How old were
It
you
was
when that
like
happened?
they didn't think she was going to make it. So I was 5.
Oh, 5 years
So
old.
while she's being hospitalized, I end up staying with my uncle at the time, one of my uncles, and he worked many hours at a hotel. His wife was a nurse. She worked ungodly hours. I was left at home alone with their 16-year-old son, Alan, most of the time. And he like molested me repeatedly for 3 months or whatever it was that I was staying there.
Oh my God.
I
Oh wow.
I had gotten away from him one day and ran. They lived out in the country, so I had to run my naked little butt way down this dirt road and rang the doorbell at somebody's house. And when they answered the door, I was like, my cousin made me suck his pee-pee and stuck his finger up my butt. And these people called the cops, and he got in trouble, ended up having to live with his grandma. I think he did maybe a little bit of like time in some juvenile detention, but I think he just pretty much had to move out of their house, and his grandma ended up taking care of him, and he lived with her from there on. But I kind of blocked that out of my mind for many years till I was about 12. So then fast forward, my mom gets out of the hospital, and she gets a big settlement. She builds us a house, and we grew up. She got pregnant when I was 8, and then again when I was 10 with my sister, my brother when I was 8, my sister when I was 10. And she was such a alcoholic, and she had a really like short fuse. Like she was very angry and reactionary, and like never ending stream of guys coming around.
Wow.
So it was a tough environment. It was just a tough life when I was a kid, you know. Like I pretty much raised my brother and sister till I was 13. So, you know, it was once I think she got in trouble for something like a D-dub or something, and she had to do some treatment, and I didn't find this out until I got into recovery, but like I think I got a year sober, and she told me that she had worked the steps before, and this is when she was talking about. And she said it really helped. But I remember that. All I remember about it, though, honestly, because I was so like bitter and resentful towards her, was that once she started trying to be a mom, I just like capitalized on that opportunity, and I was fucking around and running around with the wrong crowd. And yeah, I mean, first time like I started smoking and drinking when I was 11, and then first time I shot up I was 13, and I was selling a lot of drugs by the time I was 15.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. What were you shooting when you were that young?
First thing I tried was heroin.
First thing? At how old?
13.
Holy shit, that is so young.
Yeah, I ran away from home. I jumped on a train, and shit, we had train tracks in the backyard, and they would always stop like behind the house, you know?
Yeah.
So or they'd be going by really slow. So yeah, this one time I like jumped on a train and just rode it to Minneapolis.
Oh my God.
Where it stopped at this big fucking train place, is like all these tracks like converge in this one spot.
Yeah.
So I'm like walking the streets out there and met a guy, and he was like, "Where's your parents, kid?" and brought me to his place. And then yeah, that was basically like a shooting gallery, you know.
Oh my God.
And I just lied to them. I was like, "Let me get some of that." And they're like, "You don't want none of this." And I was like, "Yeah, I do. I do it all the time." And I never did that shit.
Oh
But
my
then
God.
I just did what I seen. I just did what I seen them do. You know, I was watching them for a while. So, yeah.
And they let you have some, huh?
Yeah,
Wow, that's crazy.
it was.
And so throughout your using, did you start experiencing like consequences? I mean, you must have had gotten in trouble from early on, right?
I mean, aside from a couple, like a legal standpoint, aside from a couple like small amount of marijuana charges, little shit.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Really?
I got in trouble for vandalizing shit. I got in trouble
Yeah.
for shoplifting. I got in trouble for like on a personal level, like sneaking out of the house and
Mm.
like I mean, I remember my brother go he used to I sold weed, right? So I always had like a pound, half pound or something all the
Whoa.
time. And he would pinch my shit off, steal the cash because I had like pockets in my backpack just full of wads of cash and shit. And I wouldn't even notice because I was selling so much of it, like 50 here, 100 there, or a big like handful of weed. Like I wouldn't notice it. And so he was in the habit of going into my shit. And so once I started getting more into the shooting up, which wasn't until later, because I overdosed almost immediately when I first tried
Heroin?
heroin at
Oh
15.
my God.
So then I didn't touch a needle until I was like almost 16, I think.
Hmm.
And when I did, um, I was doing cocaine and meth, and it was a totally different experience. And
Mm.
I fell in love with it. It was like the
Yeah.
answer to all my problems. I loved it. So anyway, my little brother found my needles and my works, like my spoon and
Mm.
cotton swabs and like my dope and everything in my backpack and gave it to my mom. I think I was
Oh
like
my
17.
God. At
She
17?
she tripped out. And
She
then
lost.
yeah, and then when I was like 20, um I was living with her friend one time and he must have said he was worried about me because I think I had been up for like 3 days shooting Delatas and I was out like dead to the world upstairs for a really long time, I guess. He must have called my mom. So I woke up to my mom waving all that stuff in my face. I had it in this coffee table in my room, like in this little cabinet in there, a paper bag full of needles, like a whole bunch of them, brand new ones. And
Mm.
she's waving everything in my face, going, "What the fuck is this?" And I was like, totally like, what the hell is going on? All I remember is punching holes in the walls, like punching a bunch of holes in the walls because it was either I was going to hit her but I had to hit something and I didn't want to hit
Sure.
her.
Didn't want to hit your
And I
mom.
was so angry. And then I
Yeah.
remember like hitting my lamp, and the second my skin touched the lamp, the fucking light bulb exploded. Like it was like so much kinetic energy from it, just like pure rage.
Yeah.
And I honestly like one of those experiences where I felt like it was like I'm but a shell, right? And it is these drugs controlling in my, it's like living in my body, and like I'm
Yeah.
not even. It was weird, man. And so she made me move back home that time too. I was very selfish, I guess. I was self-destructive, and I really thought that I was only hurting myself. But then when things like that would happen, where
Hmm.
somebody would get some insight into what was going on with me,
Yeah.
um, I just took it as a personal attack. I become very defensive and get away from me. If you don't like this is who I am, then stay away from me.
Anyway, I know I.
That's okay.
My roommate.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, so yeah, it's crazy.
Could I have you move your mic off your necklace? Oh, thank you. It's a
Was it rubbing? Was
yeah,
it?
a little
Oh,
bit.
I'm sorry.
No worries. Okay,
Okay.
so how long did that go on for before you started seeking help?
Well, I never sought help. I was generally of this mindset, right? Like, well, things got out of hand with the needle.
Hmm.
Um, it, it would get to a breaking point, like a bottom, if you will, and
Sure.
I would be like, oh, that shit got out of hand. So I'm just not going to do that anymore, but I'm going to do this over here. Like, I'll just smoke weed
Yeah.
or I'll just drink once in a while. And so by all, I mean, I've tried many different ways of like controlling or changing my habits, and really never thought that I had a problem, just that I caused a couple problems and then I had to like adjust, right? So I was very much in denial about my dependency for many years. So it wasn't until like 2008 or 2008 or the end of 2007 when I got first time I asked for help. And that was I had relapsed with the needle in 2004 after quitting for a couple of years, like altogether stopping the powders. And, you know, to me, that was like, I was a shining golden child. I was like a good boy. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I'm so good.
That's so good. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
I ruined some really important relationships even in that time, you know, in those times when I would be apart from the needle. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, 2008, I think it was, I went to that treatment and I soaked up everything I could in there, man. I really wanted to be there. But what's the things that I didn't do? I didn't stick with the program. I didn't really get to know people in the community. I kind of rested all of my hope on one guy who was also ex-intravenous drug user, and I thought he would be a perfect sponsor for me. And we made it to about step 6 or 7, and he had come to a meeting one Friday and said he relapsed in front of the whole group. And then he came up to me and said, "I'm sorry, I can't be your sponsor." And then I was just like, fuck this place, fuck this thing's a joke, blah blah blah.
And you were going to meetings at that point?
You know, just what was required of treatment. I really thought it was like a cult at the time, and I didn't believe anybody, and I thought they were all weird, and they didn't understand me, and I was nothing like these people.
Yeah. Well, we are kind of weird.
I was like, how can you be so freaking happy? I hate this place. I hate it.
How old were you then? You're like your early 20s, late 20s?
28.
28. Okay, so you're a grown-ass man at that point.
Yeah. Well, if you want to call it that. Maybe in the physical form. I'm still like a kid. I feel
still like a child.
Yeah.
A man. You're a man-child. I get it. I'm familiar.
I can dig it though. I mean, I get to experience joy in ways that I never knew before. But yeah, so I did that, and the other things I didn't do was like change the people, places, and things. Now I tried, I think for 2 months, maybe 3, I remember going to my apartment, and this was back in the day when you had all your friends' phone numbers written down in a notebook, you know, and I had the notebook sitting on the kitchen table, and I'm like flipping through, and I was bored out of my skull, and I was like, I wonder what this person's up to, and I wonder what that person's up to, but I'm like, nope, you can't call them because you know what it's going to lead to, right?
Oh, right.
But see, looking back in hindsight, I do see that if I would have let myself be authentically seen and given the people in those meetings that I did go to a chance, you know, because you can't let go of the old community without building a new one. And
exactly.
So I was just like, I was an island, and it sucked ass. And I remember specifically just one day being like, screw it. If this is what I'm going to feel like sober, I'd rather be high or drunk. Like, I don't care. So I ended up back at the bar. I lived like across the street from the liquor store, across the street from the bar.
Convenient.
Yep, a block away from my job, and I just didn't care. So I ended up getting back in touch with people, obviously, pretty quick. It was a small town I was living in at that time. So, and then after that, it was just kind of back to the same old shit. You know, things would get carried away with one substance, and then I'd switch it up, you know, and usually it was alcohol then for the next 8 years until I eventually ended up relapsing again on meth, which ended up, you know, now I'm selling for the cartel, and I'm just this last run, was insane. Dating a stripper, super toxic relationship. I'm selling dope for the cartel. I'm just,
That's scary.
I had so many different narcotics on me when I got arrested. And it was insane. Like,
Wow.
looking back, I'm just like, wow, dude, how did I not? I mean, I can remember like my brother coming and seeing a bubble in my room and wanting to ask me what was up, and I was like, no, minimize it. And then he told my
I'm
mom,
sorry, what's a bubble?
like a glass pipe for meth.
Oh. Okay.
Bubble,
Okay. So,
or
so
they
you
call it a
busted.
glass dick. Yeah, he's seen it, and then he told my mom and my sister, and my sister was a nurse, and she wanted to come have a talk with me. And I was like, no, I'm just doing this so that I can pay off my car and get an apartment for me and Wyatt. That was my son. He was 3 at the time. And I'm like, and then I'm done. I'm out. I know what I'm doing.
I know what I'm doing.
But I was like, I did not know what I was doing. I did not. I was high as like hell all the time. I never wanted to sleep because I'd be missing the money. And then
Right.
I was selling like things to bring you up, things to bring you down, things to help you get hard, all this different stuff. So like I was trying to corner the market on like any junkie's possible need,
Any possible need. Wow.
and this is just the way my brain works. I'm like, which is not a bad quality, right? Like to throw yourself 110% into something, 200% into something. That's a good quality to have. It's just I was channeling all my energy into the wrong types of stuff,
Exactly. I feel like people that have addictive personalities have so much like raw energy that if we don't channel it appropriately, like it comes out sideways sometimes.
Bad.
Bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
150%.
Oh God. Okay. So let's transition to like, so how did you finally get sober then? Because I could tell that like that could have, gone on for a long time. What happened? Did you have a moment of clarity, or did something happen that you just decided to get sober?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was kind of a progression. Like I got arrested. One of my best customers set me up, right? And he let the cops record a phone conversation about a deal that was going to go down, in which in said conversation I had mentioned what I was holding, or other stuff I had to do. I was way too comfortable and familiar with this guy, so they kind of knew everything that I had and what was going on with me at that time. I was at work, so they popped me when I left work. They got me with all this stuff right after I picked up. So a bunch of things that were all already separated into individual weights, and then some bigger weights, from when I just picked up, stuff I hadn't broke down yet. And I'm like, literally in the cop car, I probably lost like 3 gallons of bodily fluid crying. I didn't think I was gonna like ever see the light of another day. I had no idea how any of this shit works. So I was like super, super full of fear, and it very much just like freaked the fuck out. So then they end up letting me go 2 days later. And I'm like, what? But they camped out on my street for 3 months. So I was too afraid to deal, but I couldn't shake the craving, right? And then need to escape, and I had to tell my ex-wife what happened. I did that, so now I can't see my son anymore. I'm scared shitless of this pending case charges against me. I'm still like, I have to get high, right? I have to get high.
Yeah.
So I'm calling people, and I'm calling in every favor, calling in credit off the streets. I mean, I had probably $2,500 of money owed to me from people I fronted to and things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that took me for a month and a half, 2 months, and then I ended up starting to sell my stuff, all the little toys and doodads that I picked up along the way on trades and stuff. And it got to a point where I had exhausted all my resources, and I lost everything. no, all these people who once were around me, and I thought I had all this wealth of friends, and it's like, poof, they're all gone.
Mm-hmm.
And even the ones that tried to stick around, I was such an entitled little asshole, trying to guilt people into getting me high because I exhausted all my resources and it was the only thing I knew how to do. Oh, remember this time and that time and that time, like you owe me one, you
Mm-hmm.
owe me like an infinite amount. It's really sad. And so I end up into that kind of place where I felt like I had pissed off enough people. I was strung out enough that the paranoia was hardcore. This one night I decided to sell my laptop, my last resource, right? I sell it to this guy, the same guy that set me up, which I found out later when my court case finished and I got my discovery. They give you all the evidence.
Really?
Yeah.
And
So
you never went to prison
no,
or jail?
no, we'll get to that.
Oh,
But
okay.
so I sell my laptop and I'm literally like, he gives me a little over, like about 2 grams. I'm thinking, yeah, this is going to keep me good for a few days. I can just relax. Well, no, what ended up happening was I broke it all down in a big ladle and I filled a couple syringes with the thickest, hard to push in, and I did one, way too big one. And then I was thinking about my ex-girlfriend and I got really mad. And for some reason I decided to do the rest of it. So I injected all of it in like less than 15 minutes.
Oh my
And
God.
I had the most insane psychosis. It was terrifying for like 16 hours. And it was so freaking scary. And it was like I always try to liken it because it's obviously impossible to describe it in words, but I try to like tell people, like, imagine your own tailor-made version of hell.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm talking full on auditory hallucinations, interactive ones, that
Whoa.
it was really fucking crazy. And it would change on me. So it would go from like, oh, maybe I think for a couple hours of it that the cops are going to bust in through the windows on fucking wires and shit, like in SWAT.
Yeah.
And then for another part of it, I think that all the people from my work who hate my guts are out there and they want to kick my ass or something like that, And at the end of it, it culminated in this experience where it was, mind you, hallucinating that my ex-wife and her fiance are outside with my youngest son, and they want me to come outside, but they won't. But I'm like, no, let me see him, and nobody's there. I mean, I'm going from window to window to window in the house, and I'm having like arguments with them, and then I'm like pleading with them, and then I'm apologizing to them, and it was just really crazy emotional roller coaster. This whole hallucination bit that was going on.
Wow.
Anyway, it broke me down, and I was gonna kill myself, and then I didn't. I don't know why. I think maybe divine intervention. I ended up putting this big knife down and calling this guy who was my sponsor, kind of, he was one of the guys that I asked to be my sponsor. I never called him or used him.
Right.
And he would never answer the phone. So I remember dialing the number thinking he won't answer. And no, he answered. And he told me, what to do. And I just did it. It was the first time ever that I was willing to do. And this was also the first time that I experienced the power of accountability, because it's like 5 a.m. and I had to be to work at 8. And he's like, you can't go in there, dude.
No.
So he was like, here's what you do. He's like, you call your boss when you get off the phone with me and you tell him what you've been up to, and tell him that you can't come in and why. He's like, it's very important. And I was like, I can't do that. And he's like, no, you can and you will. And he's like, believe me, it might sound crazy right now, but you're going to feel something you haven't felt in a long time when you do it, because you got too many secrets, dude, and it's fucking you up. And I'm like, fine, whatever, I'll do it. And then he was like, and then you're going to call and set up therapy. You've been talking about that for 6 months. he's like, and then you're going to call me every day. You're going to tell me 3 things you're grateful for, 1 thing you're doing for your recovery. And he's like, if I don't answer the phone, just leave it in voicemail, but call me every day with that stuff.
Mm.
And then he told me to say a prayer every day, even if it's just, hey, God, I'm here. Just something to acknowledge that there's something bigger in yourself. Even if you don't believe it, just do it. Just say the words, or say something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, all right, cool. And I did that. 3 weeks later, he finally answered his phone and he's like, you're really serious about this time. And but man, when I called my job and all that shit, dude, I swear to God, I went from like the most terrifying experience of my life. I ended up having the most kick-ass day after that.
Wow.
It felt great because I just shed it all. I just dropped it all. And I had no idea what I was doing when I followed them suggestions. All I knew is I was about to just drive a knife this big through my throat. And now I feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So I started listening after that.
That's amazing. So is that your current sponsor now?
No, nope. His dad actually ended up getting, he had an illness. He was terminal and he had to live in hospice and he was going through a lot. And honestly, I should probably check on that guy. It's been a long time since I've heard from him.
Yeah.
But, I know that everybody's got their place and, an important piece of, your journey you owe to certain people. He's definitely one of those people.
No, that's amazing. I mean, sometimes we run into just the right person at just the right time.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, so you get into recovery and you start doing the deal. So did you do, you started going to AA meetings or did you go to Al-Anon or NA meetings or how does that work?
In the beginning, it was every single thing I could. I mean, I was going to CMA, AA, NA. I even checked out like Smart Recovery. They have these things called all recovery meetings that are pretty cool. They're kind of based. The format of those is like based on motivational interviewing techniques, and it's really, that's why it's called all recovery meetings, because you have people from like any kind of program are welcome there, even family supporters, all this. So I just wanted to learn, and I wanted to learn and from everyone I could, I valued for the first time in my life, like other people's perspectives and their unique experiences. Like that's why this meeting I'm going to speak at tonight was one of my first home groups. I loved it so much because it's AA and Al-Anon mixed. So I've never worked the Al-Anon program yet, but it is something I plan on doing because I've been told,
very cool.
I've been told a lot that it's kind of a natural progression, right? Like once you've been sober for a number of years, that you kind of, your recovery needs that too.
Yeah.
Because now we're kind of on the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And because they're more about like your feelings and all that core issue stuff. So
Al-Anon for me has been a little bit harder because it feels like a little more of a gray area.
Yeah.
Like it's so clear, like in 12 steps, it's like I'm not supposed to, drink or do drugs, and that's pretty black or white, right? But with Al-Anon, it feels like it's a little bit more, just a little bit harder to nail down a little bit.
I guess I could see that, but I don't know. To me, like the 12 steps is a design for living, and it really has nothing to do with drinking or doing drugs. It's
totally agreed. It's so
it's
did you
thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes,
Yeah. So you have a sponsor now, and then you've gone through all the 12 steps?
Yeah. Yep. And I've sponsored a number of people. I have yet to have a sponsee get through all the way. I have learned how to have a healthy level of detachment and not blame myself for other people's actions, because when I first started sponsoring people, that's a hard leap to make, and I don't know why, because it's funny to think about how much pressure I put on myself about, like, I don't want to mess up anybody's recovery and this and that. And then here, I mean, you could have you could have a cavalier attitude about it, which wouldn't be good, I guess, but it wouldn't matter your attitude going in. Like, people are still going to turn tail and run at some point in the first 3. And if not, then for sure, probably the 4th step. If somebody makes it through their 4th step, they'll probably finish it. And I have yet to get anybody that far. You know what I mean? So
through the 4th step?
I just don't think I would have ever made such a like big deal about it in my head before I finally decided to try sponsoring. If I had any idea that I would just have guy after guy after guy after guy after guy turn tail and run, and poof. Don't matter how much bonding took place. It's like I'm chopped liver as soon as they make that conscious decision to go back to the substance, and I understand that though too.
Absolutely.
The last thing we want to hear is a bunch of programmees and get asked hard questions when we're just trying to escape that shit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how long has it been since you've been sober?
I've been sober since,
like clean and sober. I don't know if you define it that way.
Well, kind of clean, 100% clean, July 23rd, 2016, which is also my birthday.
Awesome. Oh, yay.
Yeah. March 6th, 2016 was the last time, though, that I injected a drug, that I've smoked any weed, that I've done any pills, that I've done any narcotics. But it was funny because, like I mentioned, I really dove into the program headlong and I worked my ass off. But like, I would go home at the end of the night, and I would have like a beer, a bedtime beer. I wasn't catching a buzz.
You would go to AA and then go home and have a beer?
Well, to me, like, my problem was that needle, right? And like, whatever. It's stupid, I know. But
it's not actually, and I don't mean to be.
No, it's cool. I understand the thing because now I'm like, I call people on it, but then I can tell them this story and they know that I relate.
Yeah.
Because it's like our thinking. But I would be in my bed and I'd be sitting there cross-legged and I'd have my notebook out and my NA book out and my AA book out and I'd be highlighting shit and taking notes and reading literature.
And then glug, glug, glug.
But literally a lot of mornings, that maybe half of that beer would still be in there, right? But
yeah.
It didn't matter, as justifiable as that thinking may have been at the time in my current circumstance. My sponsor, who is my current sponsor now, and his sponsor caught me outside of this meeting, and because I had been doing like a bitch fest of a share, and I said something about how I'm coming up on 6 months clean, and they kind of cornered me and they were like, by whose count, because you've been having your little bedtime beers. And I'm like, but I don't even get buzzed, dude. And they're like, this recovery shit isn't like that. They're like, you can't just dip your toe in the water. Yeah. Right. And they explained all that to me. They're like, you either jump in that bitch and swim or you stay the fuck out. But
right.
You're either going to do this or you're not. So Mike was like, if you want to really work with me, bro, like whatever, you're going to have to make a decision. And I acted like I was cool with it in the conversation, but I'll tell you what, like, honestly, I was pissed for like 2 weeks privately, and it
just burned you a little bit, huh?
It was a struggle for me to accept those terms, but really, I remember I think I got fed up with being angry in secret angry for 2 weeks. Yeah. And I said to myself, 2 questions, man. And it just was it. I said, do I really want to try this out and see if it can work and change my life?
Yeah.
Yup. Do I want to work with Mike? Does he have what I want? Do I respect him? Yup. So when I boiled it down to 2 simple questions that were literally no brain answers for me, I just hit him up and I said, no more beers, bro. And he's like, really? And I was like, no more beers.
Wow.
And he was like, all right, pound it. And I pounded it. And that was it. I never touched a drop of alcohol after that.
Oh, so great.
Yeah. And I was up north too at a friend's who was one of my lifelong friends. And they were, they're drinkers and they smoke pot. And I was completely, when I went up there, like it was my plan to spend the weekend. Her husband has the same birthday as I do.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of a tradition. We'd just fucking party, And that was totally my intention, but I went up there a couple days early and we had drank. I didn't even get that drunk, but I got pretty drunk. The night before. And then now here it's my birthday and I feel like shit. And
this is after you told Mike that you weren't going to.
No.
Oh, this is before. Got it.
So, and all this program stuff is in my head. And that was my only experience with, because I've heard that nothing's worse than a tummy full of alcohol, but a head full of AA. It'll ruin it for you every time. I hear people say that in the rooms, and I'd always be like, what? But that was my opportunity to really experience what that meant.
You experienced that. Yeah, that is true.
And I hit him up and I said, no more beers, bro. Okay.
Oh, okay.
We met up for dinner and he was like, no more beers. I said, no more beers. Pound it. Okay, done.
Awesome.
We punched it in. And, yeah, and here we are. It's been an awesome ride. It has so far exceeded any expectations or desires I may have had in the beginning, making the decision to do this.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. And look at you. It's like you're doing all this service work. And that was actually one of the topics that I wanted to go over with you. And actually, it was interesting. We also talked about the differences in meetings. So I go to meetings out here too. But the way we do it out here in California is that there is what we call there's a secretary who runs the meeting, and then there's a chairperson. They pick a chairperson, and then the chairperson shares their experience, strength, and hope for usually about 10 minutes, and then they call on people, like they pick a topic, and then they call on people to share. So it sounds like you guys do it a little different, where did you say that they pass around a sign-up sheet or something?
That's the meeting that I'm doing tonight. That's how they do their volunteer sign up. They'll pass around a folder with a master copy of the phone list. And if you want to be added to it, you just write it on that master copy and it's got printed copies of it. So they pass around that folder and a calendar. So the calendar is like, if you want to take topic, you look, it's Saturday night meeting, right? So that's their calendar. So all the Saturdays, if it's got a name, obviously you can't have topic, but if it doesn't, write your name in there, it's your topic that week. And that's just how they do that one. But I mean, there's other meetings around here that run kind of like what you're talking about.
Okay.
Where they'll have, a short speaker, and then it'll be kind of like popcorn picking, like where they'll pick a person. Everybody will raise their hand that wants to share, but they get to pick,
Okay.
Or sometimes I'll just call on a random person and try to catch them up, not paying attention or something. Also, chairperson, you said, is like what they call a speaker out there. A chairperson would be the person who's like leading the meeting.
Oh, okay. Yep.
A secretary here is also a position, but only in that's like the financial person.
Oh, someone is like a treasurer or something.
Yeah, or wait, secretary. No, they give all the like AA related news and shit.
Interesting.
I don't know. It's weird.
It's all different.
Some programs, because every meeting is autonomous, right?
Yep.
So
right.
And any meeting is subject to change at any time via group conscience. Like if you have I always say this to people when they hit me up and they're like, man, they might have this complaint or that complaint. I'm like, go to your group conscience. It's your meeting. If you see it, or I'm like, start your own meeting, because all you got to do is go to area and you can get sanctioned to start one. You got a problem place and all that stuff. But if you see a need in recovery teaches us that it's our responsibility to do what we can to fill that need.
Absolutely.
Don't sit back and bitch if you're not willing to step up and do any of the legwork to make it better.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, this is a program of action. It teaches us to take responsibility for ourselves and for our communities. It's not about me anymore. So if I think that it's messed up that this meeting closes with the Lord's Prayer because I don't believe in that higher power, I have a different higher power. Well, then guess what, dude? You should go start a secular meeting that's, specifically, give it a catchy name so people know that it's not going to be God talk in that one or whatever.
Right.
I mean, it is what it is, but
Yeah.
if you ain't gonna do something about it, then don't talk about it. Don't bitch.
Don't complain.
Right.
Yeah. So tell me, it doesn't sound like you grew up with a lot of religion or anything like that. How did you, I'm putting it mildly.
Right.
So how did your concept of a higher power evolve from the time that you showed up to the program to now?
Well, in the beginning, it was, I had kind of mentioned it earlier that seeing that change, right? These results in front of my face, I would be like, that shit won't last. And I would watch those people, man. And then after a while, I would be like, they're growing even more. Like this
Wow.
was really working for them. Like really, really, really.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my higher power in the beginning, was the collective, the group, the fellowship, the shared wisdom in the room, and those steps on the wall, and the fact that I was witnessing with my eyes the change in people. That was it. And then
a God of evidence, so to speak.
just like if I see it, I believe it, I guess. Yeah. Like because to say that I understood how they changed or how this worked would be just a bold-faced lie. I mean, even when you're in your early steps and you want this and you're completely, you got the how down, right? The honesty, the open-mindedness, the willingness, it doesn't matter because you're still like, what the fuck? All the time. You're like, what the fuck with the suggestions that are given to you? You're like, what the fuck when they tell you what to do, or when they ask you stuff, or when they straight up take you just poured your soul out, and then they sit there and they just poke every hole in that flawed thinking system you got going on, and like bust some truth bombs on you. It's hard to take, right? Lots of hard pills to swallow. So looking at that, it was like, that was my higher power, and that was a powerful enough experience for me to stick with it in those tough times. But yeah, once you get to a certain point, you start to get the relief, you start to
experience it.
And then now these things on the walls and the things that they say in the readings and that you hear people sharing about in the rooms start to take on a deep personal significance to you, because you are all of a sudden, every cliche that used to make me just irritated and want to like punch people in the face, I was like, oh yeah, man, yeah, I love it, right? It's so genius because it's so true. And so anyway, then I ended up, I had to go back to treatment because I was still in the process of my court case, and I had failed at treatment the first time, which was actually right before that whole psychosis thing. That whole experience ended up leading me to, because like I went inpatient and did really well in there, and then a guy that I was in there with was going to do treatment with me at this IOP, and he relapsed. His first night in there, we're sitting next to each other and we're watching a movie, and I could tell he was high on heroin. He had like pin dots for pupils, right? And I'm like, bro, and he's like, and I was like, not judging, just saying. And then he didn't show up the next day. And then I found out that following morning that he was dead. And this was like, this was the 27th of December, 2015. I remember it well. I couldn't take it. I remember just like isolating for a week before I finally ended up calling Dope Man, and I was high again. And I got away with it a couple times while I was in that program, and then I ended up, the guilt was eating me up, and I called my counselor and I told him, look, you would drop a UA, I would do it that night. I would be high.
Well, I'm sorry, what's a UA?
A urinary analysis.
Sorry.
This test.
Okay, sorry. Continue.
So he's like, sorry, I'm gonna have to discharge you. So anyway, like now fast forward, I have to go back to treatment. So I'm like, fine, I'm going to make the most of this. And I did that. And, it was cool. I was able to learn a lot more, even though I was already working a strong program, but it's definitely I think I forgot what your question was originally.
It doesn't matter. I have more.
All right, cool. So off on
You
that.
know, and I was actually gonna ask you. You said it sounds like you've been sort of on this quest for knowledge. Oh, did you remember what you were gonna say? What?
You said your original question was, how did your concept of a higher power change?
Oh, thank you. Yes.
So yeah. Anyway,
What's it like today?
So but I needed to put that backstory of why I was in treatment again. No, I was kidding.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there on a Sunday, and as many Sundays, it was visiting day, in extended care, which is like an additional 3 months of treatment. So I was there for like 4.5 months, and I hated Sundays. It was depressing as shit. And these guys I knew from NA and CMA were every Sunday morning, they'd pull up in this van, and they'd pick these guys up and go to church. And I would be like, I love them guys. I want to go hang out with them, because I was getting to be in a really dark place, and I was just living in fear. I was scared. I was looking at 111 months in prison. I didn't know if I'd ever see Wyatt, my son.
Oh my God.
Again, I was just really couldn't shake that predisposition to obsess over these circumstances that I really couldn't do anything to change.
Yeah.
And so anyway, one day they come back to drop some guys off, and I went out and smoked a cigarette with them, and I was like, can I go to church with you guys next week? And they were like, absolutely, dude. And I was going for the coffee and donuts and to get out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And what I got was just a profound spiritual experience, a message that I swear to God was tailor-made for me from God, speaking to fatherhood, and that no matter the weight of your choices in life, that you can just set it all down, in Jesus's lap. And for whatever reason, I mean, I'd heard the gospel message before, but not in a way that hit me right between the eyes like that. I also had never experienced the sense of like the Holy Spirit or that kind of feeling. And so this was just like, I couldn't stop crying for like almost 2 hours after this service was over.
Aww.
And I didn't know what was wrong with me. And Jim, my buddy who was driving the van, he was like, puts his hand on my shoulder. That's the Holy Spirit, brother. And for some reason I believed him. So anyway, I end up finding Christ, coming to Christ. And since then we've started a recovery ministry at the church.
Was that the one that you were telling me about?
Yeah.
Grace Recovery.
Grace Recovery.
Oh, awesome.
We're having our 2-year anniversary this coming Tuesday, actually.
Oh, look at you getting all in service and
so
something.
Well, it was really Jim's kind of, it's Jim's baby, but I have been blessed to be able to be a part of it since its conception. He wanted to put a team of people together when the idea was first presented to him by one of the associate pastors of the church, because he didn't know how to do it. So we got some people from like a neighboring faith-based to help us figure out kind of the format and that. And I just showed up, man, and I continue to show up and do what I can. And I lead small groups, and I speak there sometimes, and I just get to, it's a home group, and it's service commitment for me, which I'm really grateful to have, just like the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the book talks about nothing ensures sobriety like intense work with another alcoholic.
Yeah.
You're doing the deal, and, I really admire that. Listen, I have a soft spot in my heart for anyone who does stuff like podcasting. Obviously I do it too. So yay me. But, but it's like what you guys are doing, what you and Charlie are doing, and what you're doing with Jim and stuff. That is such important work, because it feels like once you've experienced being saved from the suffering that we put ourselves through from, and it's just like love and knowledge, and connection and things like that, and being really willing to do the work, that the healing comes. And it's like, I get it. Once you've experienced it, it's hard not to want to shout it from the rooftops, but
it is a responsibility, right? And
I agree. Yeah. There's so much suffering.
I look back, in the beginning before this whole, Christ experience in my life. You know, it was still working just in powerful ways in my life. The program was still working. So to anybody out there who's like, see, I've never had that kind of spiritual experience and this isn't working for me. Well, my question to you would be like, well, what are you holding back? What are you not, you know, because if you 100%, this will work. It's been my experience. And that was even before, you know, if anything, like the spiritual aspect and finding God, that's just been a level up, kind of like a next tier. But I mean, I still struggle, and you know, I'm still gonna like take my will back and all these things.
Sure.
It's a process, a lifelong process, you know.
Yeah, it is a process. We learn to trust the process because we have positive experiences that come out of it. You know, like the experience of God, the experience of the Holy Spirit, or you know, even if you break it down to just like holy, you have a holy moment or an experience. It's just that energy that. I don't know. I agree with you 100% that it's like, what are you holding back? Or you really do have to do the work in order to get the.
Well, and our secrets, I think one of the most profound statements I ever heard in this thing is our secrets keep us sick, you know. It's so true. And that's why when I was having that psychosis, I found instant relief just from telling my boss that I was selling dope. I had relapsed again, you know, because I kind of was honest with them before that, and they thought that I was sober, and that's why they gave me my job back. I had already gotten fired from that.
Yeah.
And then here I go, you know, on a week-long bender right after I started again.
Yeah.
So they probably were just watching me decline day after day. But to me, I was just like zipping through, you know, the shift would zip by, and then I'd be in my head, my room, isolating, getting high.
But what great people that they, you know, continue to try to support you and help you out.
Oh, they still do. You know, like I've been offered opportunity to go back there numerous times.
Yeah.
Since, you know, really getting my shit together, but I ended up getting into a different line of work. I worked in restaurants for like 17 years. I'm like, I won't feel bad if I don't go back to cooking or restaurant management. I just won't feel.
You're all done with that.
But, you know, it's funny. Went back to the faith piece. It's like I started out and I knew the importance of the service commitments and things. So, you know, I was just super pumped about the grace recovery thing, but then I wanted to do more, right, with the spiritual aspect. So like I joined a Bible study, and that's been something I've stuck with. And I started selling books at their bookstore. Well, now it's like they ended up bringing Stephen ministry into the church. So I took that on. I just finished 6 months of training. Now I'm a licensed Stephen minister, and I'm ready to take on care receivers and and like I'm leading the baptism team now, so I help facilitate baptism. I just baptized my mom last Sunday.
Oh, you did? That's amazing.
I'll email you the video. It's crazy.
I would love to see that.
And if you want to put it in your
show notes, I would love to. That would be amazing.
If anybody wants to see me baptizing my mom,
that is precious.
It's crazy. This guy actually does the multimedia for the church. He wanted to make a film about me.
Documentary style?
Yeah. And so anyway, we've shot all the footage for this film. He's in the process of editing it right now.
Yeah.
And I think he's almost done with it. And that's something too I'll send to you later.
Please do. I would be happy to share that with, like, on the social, in the, you know, the Facebook group or on my newsletter, and on the.
It's gonna be like 15 minutes or something like that. 15 to 18 minutes, I think he said.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was so uncomfortable though for me. I was like, what the hell? Like, I can sit in my buddy's basement and talk into a microphone. That's fine. But having a
that's what you and Charlie do.
Around
the camera.
And then asking questions, and you have to be like mic'd up, and you got this big like battery pack.
Yeah.
It was weird, man.
I bet. Did you feel a little special though?
No, I felt awkward as fuck, but I tried to, but I tried to be as genuine and honest as I could in my answers and stories I told, and I can't wait to see what he's put together. And you know, I've had people already saying they want to buy it and stuff. It's like, I'm just gonna put it out there for anyone, you know, because it's not, again, this isn't about money. I'm not trying to get rich or become a celebrity or be like Charlie always says, I'm not trying to get famous in an anonymous program. I love that line. It's such a silly,
Not trying to
but
get
it's so
famous.
true.
Yeah.
Like,
I
I'm
hear
not
ya.
a fucking guru. I'm just a guy. I still struggle. I'm just
Yeah,
doing
of
what I
course.
can.
Yeah.
We
But
all
just
do.
responsible for carrying the message, which is,
Yeah.
yeah, super cool.
If
Well,
it can
listen,
help one person, it's worth it.
I couldn't agree more. And I love the work that you guys are doing. And Charlie's up next. He's going to be
Yeah.
on the podcast next, and
I
I'll come
honestly
visit.
don't know if I'm going to be available to be on when we do
Record mine. Yeah.
because I
Well,
have my
we'll figure
son
it
that
out.
week.
It's whatever works for you guys. But listen, you've been so generous with your time, and thank you so much for sharing your story and for all the work that you do. I just, like I said, I have a soft spot in my heart for people who are really committed to, spreading the message. So thank you so
Same
much for all
here.
the work you do.
You as well. I love your show.
Yay.
I've just heard about it via your email, but
Yeah,
I've listened to a few episodes since hearing
nice.
about it. It's good.
Thank you so
You're very,
much.
very nice and warm and welcoming. So thank you.
Yes. Well, listen, I can't wait to publish this, and I'll let you know. But again, thank you so much. You have a great day.
All right. Yeah,
All right.
care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting odatchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.